Hello, everyone. I am Brooke Warner, and this is a series of FAQs that I'm doing for the She Writes community of authors and prospective authors. I am the publisher of She Writes Press. This video is about blurbs. The question comes often about blurbs, which may be known as endorsements. Blurbs are the little things that you see on the back cover, sometimes on the front cover of a book, words of endorsement, words of praise. And typically you are soliciting these from people that you know. Occasionally, you may be soliciting them from people you admire and don't know. And so there is a bit of an art to the blurb asking. Basically, start early, number one. I usually recommend that authors start 6 to 8 months in advance, and you would start by locating the person that you want to ask. Sometimes you'd have to find that person, especially if they're a better known author, through their direct messages on their social media platforms or through their contact pages, sometimes via their literary agents or their speakers bureau. Basically, at that point, you're going to write a very flattering letter. You're asking them if they would be open to blurbing your book. It's an ask to see if they're even interested in the first place, not just saying, here it is, do it, obviously. And so you're asking if they're open and willing. And then you are also giving them a timeline saying, I don't need it until 6 months from now, for instance. And the reason that I'm asking you is because, and then you fill in the blank about why having them as your blurber would be so meaningful to you. It's a good idea to tell them that you're a fan. If it is someone that you know, of course, you can say, we know each other in this capacity, and this is why I'm asking you. In the world of book publishing, typically you are asking like genre people. So it's most common for novelists to blurb novelists, memoirs to blurb memoirists, etc. However, there are exceptions to that rule. So for instance, if you are writing a memoir about mental health, you could for sure have a psychiatrist blurb your book as an example. If you're writing a novel and the protagonist is a teenager who is addicted to social media, for instance, maybe you would want to have someone who is a social media expert or someone who is writing in that field say something about your book. So there are certainly instances where subject trumps genre. So keeping that in mind, you ask permission. Is it okay for me to send along my book for you to review? And this is where it starts to get kind of nuanced and really up to you about how you want to proceed with the solicitation. I am a big fan of basically making it as easy for people to say yes as possible. I often will couch into my requests. I know that you're very busy, and so I'm more than happy to just send along my favorite chapter and the chapter summaries so that you don't have to feel obligated to read the whole thing. The deal here is that you are letting them off the hook to read your entire book, which is perfectly fine. You don't want to get too precious about people needing to read the whole book or being in love with your book. I mean, I know that feels good, of course, but it's certainly not necessary. And it's helpful and easier for people to be able to say yes if you give them a lot of permission structure to just know what your book is about. And sometimes if you provide them with template language. So I was recently asked to write a blurb for someone, and she said, here are 5 different plausible blurbs that you can adapt and put into your own words. I found that very helpful. I ended up writing the blurb myself, but I did use some of her language and kind of incorporated it into my blurb. And it just gave me a nice framework, knowing what she wanted and expected. So that was a way in which she made it easy for me to say yes. Once they say they're interested, they're open, then you give them a sense of when the book is coming. And you also can ask them if they would prefer to see an advanced reader copy. If they want it earlier, you want to be prepared to print and bind the manuscript. When you do that, you go down to Kinko's or equivalent. You bind the manuscript into a 3-ring binder, double-sided, and put the cover on the front. Some people really want to do this because the arcs are not ready early enough and they want to give the blurber plenty of time. Sometimes blurbers ask for the manuscript to be sent digitally because they don't want to waste paper. That's great. I had a blurber with my last book ask me to audio record my voice reading one of my chapters because that was the only way she was going to be able to do it. And I said, of course, absolutely. So you really want to make it as easy as possible for the person to say yes, and you want to do it in whatever format they want it in. It's really fundamental that that be the case. And then the final thing is just the art of nagging. Follow up, not to be too naggy, but it is an art of nagging where you might say, hey, I'm in touch now because it's about a month until the due date. So I'm checking in, seeing how it's coming along. I'll be in touch with you in another few weeks. Then with a week left to go, hey, just checking in on this. My blurb is due to my editor soon. So at some point you get the blurb and you celebrate. Sometimes, and disappointingly, you might be ghosted. Sometimes people will tell you that they don't want to blurb the book, at which point you have to just be gracious and say, thank you so much for considering. So it's not an easy task by any means. It's something that gives a lot of authors a lot of anxiety, but it's still a pretty critical aspect to being a published author. And one of the great things about She Writes Press is that the authors do blurb each other. And so you can identify people early on that you might want to ask that may be a supportive person in your journey so that you have a blurb or two or possibly three. We usually say one is the minimum, and then only so many blurbs can fit on the back cover of a book, usually four or five. So, 1 to 4, I think, is kind of the sweet spot. And sometimes people have more. No matter what, it takes a lot of persistence and just reminding yourself that you have a great book no matter what, because it can be a little bit of an exercise in rejection. So hang in there on this process. In the end, it will be worth it.